All right, let's make a formal introduction for our listeners. Good afternoon, Phil. My name is Claudio, and I'm calling you from Washington, D.C., from the studio of Fairfax City. We are very grateful that Phil Manzanera accepted our invitation to our show. Phil, welcome to the show.
It's a great pleasure, Claudio, to be on your show. And looking
Today
forward
we are going to be talking about this book, Revolución to Roxy. Of course, it wasn't revolution, it was revolución. The people thought were Spanish that will know the meaning of that. So the first question, what was the motivation to write this book to begin with?
Well, you know, when you get a lot of musicians, when they get to around about my age, I'm 73 and I've been a musician for 52 years, a professional musician.
Correct,
and, you start to look back on your life and you're trying to make sense of what happened, from a musical point of view, but then obviously because I have a very different background to all the other musicians in Roxy and to a lot of British musicians.
Right.
I'm trying to make sense of where my family originally came from. And of course, I'm one of 50 cousins in Colombia. I have a big family. And I thought for my family, for my grandchildren, for my children, it would be good to put something down that talked about where we came from. And also a little bit about some of the adventures I've been on. And so really it was done for them, really.
Yeah.
And then talking to Claire, my wife, we said, well, obviously there's a whole musical side that people would be interested in. So why don't we just, make it for more than just the family? And, but in general, a lot of people say, oh, I wish I'd asked my parents about this and that, and it's too late because they've died. And I exactly the same. I wish I'd had the forethought to ask my father. He died when I was 15, about his origins, where he came from, and my mother. My father was British. My mother was from Barranquilla, Colombia.
Yep.
And so putting it all down in a book is a bit sort of cathartic for me, and also it enables me to sort of say, right, this is what happened musically. This is what happened before, and I can look forward now. I don't dwell in the past. I'm always looking forward, and take a bit of time to make sense of what happened, and then move forward.
Good for you. And I imagine that this book, it is or it's going to be available in Spanish as well for people in Latin America. And obviously in Spain, you're very well known in Spain for Héroes del Silencio and all the other bands that you work with, right?
Yeah, I did have a copy of the Spanish version somewhere. But
it is available, right?
Yeah. I made sure that actually it came out first in Spanish in October last year, in October in Spain. And when I went to Cartagena in January to the Hay Festival, it was all about the Spanish version. And also, that's when I gave it to all my cousins in Colombia.
Yeah. Good for you. And the people, for your cousin, looking at the book and seeing, they didn't know probably who Roxy Music was, or the people, David Gilmour, all the other people that can play. Man, my cousin is really famous. I mean...
Well, you see, one of the chapters in the book is about when I go to Colombia in 1991 with David Gilmour and with Roger Daltrey to play supposedly for the first time ever in South America Pink Floyd songs or the Who.
Exactly, right, yeah.
And all the adventure. And of course, we had no idea. Well, I had idea, but those, what I call numpty musicians, who all of us, went at the height of the cartel wars. We went to Cali. It's like, what are we thinking of? It's like, oh my God. And the Pink Floyd manager and all us musicians said, yeah, let's go for free. We're going to do an environmental free concert in Cali, no sé qué, with this and that. And of course, you can read in the book that it wasn't what it was, turned out to be, not what it was meant to be. So, I mean, we were lucky to get out of there.
Alive. Yeah, I know what you mean, man. I know exactly what you mean. Early in the book, I think in page 17, you were looking at a guitar in your home, and your mom told you, well, if you if you're going to be such a pain about touching my guitar, I better teach you some chords.
Yeah, and look, here is that guitar. Here is the guitar. It's with me every day.
Wow. So,
it's out of tune, obviously.
Of course, yeah.
But
the fact that you have it is a big deal, you know.
Made in Havana in 1957. This is the guitar that I first, what I talk about in the book. With my mother,
right.
You know. So that's where I first started learning to play the guitar.
Yeah. And she told you some, you know, she was, you know, teaching some basic chords, different type of music. I mean, we're talking about Colombia, right? So it was salsa, merengue, vallenato, different type of music.
To be fair, what she started teaching me was acompañamiento, accompanying yourself to sing songs.
Right.
But they were songs like Cielito Lindo.
Right.
Lunar que tiene cielito lindo.
Right.
Exactly. All that. Yeah. It wasn't, you know, I wish it was like salsa, but you can't play salsa just on an acoustic guitar.
Right. The basic chord, right? That you people
just some chords. You know. And just to show, you know, when I know, because I have grandchildren, you know, who are, and I play guitar and they just come and just pull the strings, you know, and I say, okay, you have a go. And I said, no, don't, you know, so you have to like touch. So this is how you do it, gently, suave, boom, bang, bang.
Right. That's right.
And that was me, you know.
Yep, I know what you mean. Your upbringing was very different, as you say in the book, for most of the English kids from the Roxy music living overseas, you know, traveling from one country to another. I think by reading the book, people will know a lot more about you, the first 4 chapters, that the people in Roxy music to begin with. I mean, you hang out with Roxy music guy and all the life, you know, 72 to 2002 when the last gig here in the US for 50 years. And people by reading the book, you will know about you a lot more than the people that Phil Berry or Mackay or Paul and all the other people that you played, right? So
that's right. You know, I have said to the other guys, can you please write books? Because I want to know more about you guys.
That's right. Your side story, yeah.
Yeah, because, you know, I said to Brian Ferry, you know, you should write a book because I want to know what you were thinking and what happened back there from your point of view. You know, This is my point of view and my story, but wow, would I love to know what was in your mind or what was in Andy Mackay's mind or even in Brian Eno's mind, you know, at the time, you know, and obviously when you live through it, it's like a lot of people really, you know, who have friends and when they get to a certain age and they talk about the past times, they say, well, what did you think back then? You know, and things like that. So it's a very curious thing that people do anyway, but people who are in bands, it's even more interesting, you know, to know what they were thinking at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then, so you went for playing a little course with your mom. You knew you were learning Spanish at the time. And how the rock and roll and that side of music into you? I think in the book you mentioned that your dad had like a Zenith radio that you were turning the dial and listen to music overseas, and eventually was, you know, rock and roll. I said, what, you know, Elvis Presley at the time, Chuck Berry, and so forth.
Yeah, so basically, obviously, when we had to leave Cuba after the revolution and all the gun battles from our garden, etc., so we went to New York. From Havana, we managed to get out, and then my father said, we said, where are we going next? And he said, well, we're going to Hawaii. Oh, wow, Hawaii, okay. So we went to Hawaii, and of course, there's the hula hula music and the Waikiki, you know, and all that music. And then from Hawaii, we went to Venezuela. But by the time we got to Venezuela, Elvis Presley had brought out Blue Hawaii, the film. And you could the great thing is that you could watch Elvis Presley on the big screen in cinemas. And so you could, you know, and Jailhouse Rock and stuff like that. So you got the excitement of rock and roll up there, but then American college kids would come to Caracas in Venezuela and in their holidays, vacations, and they would play at parties, and they would play Chuck Berry and they would play Buddy Holly, and they would play the Beach Boys, you know, the beginnings of all the. So I began, me and my Venezuelan friend, we heard these, you know, Americans playing this stuff, and we thought, wow, this is so cool. Also, all the girls from our class at school were just like fixed on these guys. So me and my friend Michael Sanchez Vegas, we said, we got to get electric guitars.
That's right.
This way we're going to get the girls. You know,
that's right.
That's a story you hear so many times from
right. Yeah.
male musicians, you know, of our generation, when they started. Yeah. So also a British boy came to Venezuela and he was at boarding school in England. He showed me how to play some Chuck Berry riffs, and it was very difficult. And I thought, oh, what's this? This is amazing, you know. So then I became hooked on pop music, really, and what they used to call R&B, rhythm and blues. And so I sent to England for a postal course on how to play the guitar. And it was useless because it was just all theory and stuff like that. No pictures. I just wanted pictures where to put your fingers, you know. So eventually I said to my parents, send me to England. I was like 9, 10. He said, I need to go live in a boarding school in England. So my brother was already there. So they sent me I arrived in London in September 1960. And I was at school in England for the whole of the 60s. So the beginning of everything, the Beatles, the Stones, the Kinks, the Who, Jimi Hendrix arrived, psychedelia in London, Pink Floyd, everything.
Wow.
You know, so I was just like a whole wave. I was surfing, literally. I'd been surfing in Hawaii, and now I was surfing music, this onslaught of incredible social change and music change in England. And that was the center. And they then went off to America, didn't they? And then they spread the word, the Beatles and everybody, and influenced just so many musicians who are now famous, from Springsteen, you name it, everyone. Yeah, they say we saw the Beatles on that first TV show, and it was like, whoa, you know.
Yeah. Wow, that's another world together, right? So
yeah.
The music you were listening as a little kid in Colombia to, you know, going to a boarding school in the UK and absorbing all the music, man, this is another world. You know, never mind that it's English, not Spanish, but you know, all the music. And so you were there, you began listening to a lot of music, developing an appetite for that type of music, and then something incredible happened for your 10th birthday present, that you receive a postal order for £5, and feel free to elaborate what you did with the money, because that's important.
So my birthday is on 31st of January, so I'm at boarding school, and a letter arrives from my mom and dad from Venezuela, and it's got £5. They called a postal order. Yeah. And I saw this catalog for guitars, and it said there was a beautiful red Hofner Galaxy guitar. It cost £55, and it said you could buy it on hire purchase, well, you know, on installments. And I had no idea what that was, but I said, well, I've got £5 there. Apparently, I signed a contract. I had no idea what I signed. I sent it. They sent me the guitar arrived at the boarding house, and this beautiful thing. I've still got it. It's amazing. But of course, I didn't realize you had to pay £5 every month. So the next month, a solicitor's letter came saying, we're going to take you to court because you haven't paid the next
second installment. Yeah.
What's this? So I get on a plane to Caracas, you know, and all the flights were free because my dad worked for the airline company. And I was getting closer and closer, you know, because the flight went from Bermuda to Antigua to Barbados to Trinidad and then to Caracas. And I've got the letter with me, and I've got the guitar, and I'm just worrying the whole time. So what's my father going to say? And then I get to Mackay airport in Caracas, and he comes on the plane because he's allowed to, because he's like the boss. And I show him the picture and the guitar, and I burst into tears, say, well, I don't know, and he said, what have you done? What have you done? And he looks at the letter, a court order, like, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? Blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. So we get home, and he said, oh well, okay, I'm going to somehow have to sort this out. But what is that thing? He said, I said, electric guitar. Okay, well, plug it in. He thought you plugged it into the wall. It's like electric guitar, like a toaster or something. Yeah, right. Okay, plug it. I said, no, you don't understand. You need an amplifier as well. It's an amplifier, went crazy. But in the end, they bought me a little Venezuelan amplifier, and he paid for it. He had pity on this little idiot,
But I'm glad that he got pity on you. Let me share my screen. I wanna show you something interesting as well to see that. All right, share my screen. I wanna show you. We are talking about. I found.
Oh, there it is.
That's the Hubble Galaxy. Yeah, exactly.
55 guineas. That's it. Wow, that's 55 pounds. Incredible. Yeah. And the case, slimline case for 8 guineas. So I must have bought. I did pay for a case as well.
Yeah.
But
wow. You still have the guitar?
I still have the guitar. The guys from Hofner came about 10 years ago to see it, and it's in immaculate condition. It's got an amazing whammy bar, sort of tremolo arm thing on it. It's a great guitar. I think actually Mark Knopfler started on one of those.
Really?
I saw an interview with him recently, and he was talking about this red guitar. I'm sure it was the same one, but I need to ask him, actually.
Yeah. 55 pounds was a lot of money back then.
Yeah, I had no idea about money, obviously,
Of course, you were a little kid, right? So
yeah.
All right, let me close that one. All right, so show you that unfortunately, after passing your dad passed away very early. You have a conversation with your mom, right? And you say, well, I have the guitar. I've been playing. I'm hanging out with my kids at school, and I would like to be a rock and roll star and be in a band, right? And of course, your mom didn't know any better. And I think feel free to mention that. I think you talked to your brother. Your brother was in the UK living. Hey, I have a kid who is very good and going to be a musician. Maybe I should talk to him and make the introduction. And that was David Gilmour. That's why you end up meeting the guy, right?
That's right. I said to my mom, she's a sweet lady from Barranquilla. She understands cumbia and salsa. I said, what's this rock and roll? I said, look, I think I want to be a musician. I didn't say I want to be a star. I didn't think that at all. I want to be a musician. And so my brother said, okay, yeah, professional musician. Let's go and ask someone who's just become a professional musician what you have to do to become a professional musician. And we're going to have lunch with him. And so we went and it was David Gilmour, and I was 16, and we went and had lunch. And at the end of the lunch, we went back to his apartment. He picked up his guitar. He went to Abbey Road, and he just started recording the first album that he was on, which was called A Saucer Full of Secrets, that Sid Barrett was still on.
Yeah.
So, he's a friend still. He lives next door, actually, here in the country. He says, I can't remember what I said, but it must have been something fantastic, because 5 years later, you managed to join Roxy Music. So, hey.
Right.
And I'll tell you what happened. 5 years later, I was in this place called Air Studios in London, which was George Martin's studio. And we started recording the second Roxy Music album, For Your Pleasure. And in Studio 1. And in Studio 3, they were mixing Dark Side of the Moon. And so I went and I listened. And the guy who was the producer then was a guy called Chris Thomas, who, when he stopped mixing that album, produced our second Roxy Music album. And so he played me the solo from Money. from
Yeah.
money. And I listened to it, I thought, my God, that is absolutely incredible. So I sent David, in those days, you know, you didn't have phone numbers for people. I sent him a telegram. Said, remember me? I'm in a band now. It's called Roxy Music. And I thought your solo was amazing. And we re-established contact then. And I was like 22 then.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So, and then we've been, ever since then, we've been known each other and played and written together and produced stuff together and stuff. So that was so I met two people when I was 16. One was David Gilmour and the other was Robert Wyatt, who was the drummer in a band called Soft Machine, and Soft Machine and Pink Floyd were the coolest bands in London in 1968. They were like so cool, they're beyond cool, you know. And obviously Sid Barrett was in the band then. So I knew too, and they were like, if you meet somebody when you're in your teens and they are doing a job that you would like to do, and you meet them, it's a great inspiration.
Absolutely.
And you think, oh, maybe I could do this, because these guys aren't like Superman or something. They're sort of nice, normal sort of guys, sort of. But that whole idea of sort of having a mentor for kids is such a great idea, because I'm a product of that. I thought,
something that you look, up to, right? So you're, they were a couple of years older than you, and you say, man, I really want to be in a band, and two, want to play like this guy, and, play, at the time you're not thinking about the money or the fame or nothing. You want to get up there and play club, meet some people, and people like your music, and then make that as your career, so.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's right. A life. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, I think you were in a band called Quiet Sand, and with your friend Bill McCormick, and then he joined another band, and you say to him, man, what am I going to do with my life? And he mentioned, what about Roxy Music? I seen an ad on a Melody Maker. Why don't you give them a call? Of course, we are talking about before the internet, no cell phone. You use the old phone to call people, and go and pay them a visit, and then and see what happened. But I wanna share something else with you, and all the stuff that I'm showing you can see in the book. So it's something very, very interesting, because all right, let me look at this. This is the ad that, I don't know if you can see that, right?
Yeah, that's it.
That's it. The perfect guitarist. Original, created, adapted, melodic, fast, slow, elegant, witty, scary, stable, tricky. Quality musician only, Roxy. Man, that is what?
They weren't called Roxy Music then. They were called Roxy. So I looked at the ad and I thought, okay, tick, 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 tick. I was just like, but so I rang and I went round there, and Brian and Andy Mackay were renting in a little tiny working man's cottage in Battersea. And I went in, and there was Brian Ferry, Andy Mackay, Brian Eno, and the original bass player, Graham Simpson. And Paul Thompson wasn't there that day. But I thought, these guys, they're different. They're special. Also, they were a bit older than me, and they were very grown up. They'd been to university, they had bank accounts, they had a car, they had borrowed money for a little PA. They were grown, two of them were teachers. Andy Mackay was a music teacher, and Brian Ferry was an art teacher. And so we had a jam on a number, and there was only 2 chords, and it was very simple. And I'd be playing in a prog rock band, playing very complicated music. And I thought, this is wonderful. This is so liberating. And I thought to myself, this is like being in the Velvet Underground, because it's just 2 chords and it's a lot of experimenting, but a different kind of experimenting from the jazzy type thing that I've been playing before. So, you know, I had long conversations with them and everything. And then I had a terrible cold that day. And then I left and apparently I failed the audition. So, but I thought, oh, that's such a shame because these guys, I know they're going to be successful. They're so different and wonderful. And so I was a bit disappointed. But then I heard that they'd got a guy who'd been in a famous band before, David O'List. And I thought, well, fair enough. He's a great guitarist. I'd seen him play at the Albert Hall with the band called The Nice and everything. And I said, well, fair play, you know. But it didn't work out with Davey. And then they called me back. And then one thing or another, I ended up like the week after I turned 21, had this sort of another sort of audition, which they didn't say it was an audition, but they got me there under false pretenses. And I did play, and I learned the numbers, and they asked me to join. And then 2 days later, asked me to join. Then the following week, signed the first management contract. I think I played about 4 gigs. Then we started recording the first album. 3 months later, it came out. On the same day as Ziggy Stardust from David Bowie. And the following week, we were supporting Bowie at a pub in Croydon, London, and then he liked us a lot and asked us to support him on the Rainbow, a big gig of his. And we were in the charts, number 4. So it all happened very, very quickly.
Very fast, yeah. I remember a little bit. I want to make a little interruption there. I think Brian called you back, and they say, I think they were like in a way they tried to set you up, right? Because the phone rang. And then he say, you fancy coming down for mixing the sound? And you say, well, I don't know anything about mixing. Don't worry, will show you what needs to be done and so on and so forth. And then you thought, maybe this is very weird, something up here. I better learn the chord. So you learn in between the night before or whatever, you learn,
I did. Yeah.
The song that you recorded on a tape somewhere. You knew who Roxy music was, the music. You went there, you were prepared. So it turned out to be an audition. I said, man, this guy's very good. He knows the music, of course.
Yeah, they were sort of playing a trick on me, but I was sort of playing a trick on them.
Of course.
But it just occurs to you, the saying that says, fail to prepare, prepare to fail.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I was prepared.
That's right. Yeah.
And it's one of those things, life lessons that, people say about you have to, spend 10,000 hours learning an instrument or anything to get good at anything, whether it's tennis or playing musical instruments. I started when I was electric guitar when I was 9 or 10. So, but by the time I get to 21, I've been put in a lot of years, but I was ready to take my chances or any opportunities that came up. Right. So and I just got lucky,
Yeah, right. So you joined the band. I think you were supporting Bowie. I think you guys played at the beginning of the Rainbow Theatre, London, 1920 of 1972. So supporting Bowie, that was a big deal, big deal, right?
It was a big deal, but we had supported him as a very small deal at a pub in Croydon.
Okay.
Yeah, and there was probably about 50 people there. But, every time I used to bump into David over the years, the next 45 years, we would talk about that gig, the Greyhound, Croydon.
That's right.
And we'd have a laugh because he'd say to me, Phil, if I had £1 for every person who said he was there, I would be a multimillionaire. I said, well, actually, you are a multimillionaire.
That's right.
Let's not quibble about that. I quite agree. There was only about 50 people there, but it was a double bill in a very small place.
Good
Roxy
for you.
Bowie, and it was in the Ziggy Stardust period. So they're all dressed incredibly like spiders from Mars, And they were even dressed like that in the afternoon in the sound check, and I thought, wow, this is the way they dress every day. We only dress up, go on stage, but they're they're living the life, you know.
That's right, living the dream, right?
Yeah.
So you signed a contract. You were, a young kid, and then eventually you need to tell your mom, right? I don't know if you end up calling your mom or she was living with you at the time, but
I was living with her, yeah.
okay, and you say, Mom, you know that all the education that your dad and yourself put a lot of effort for me to get in, and I've just finished the A level. Forget about that. I want to be a rock and roll guy. I want to make music out of my life. And your mom telling, what is that? What is a musician? What is a rock and roll person? What do you mean by signing a contract and being a band and playing nights instead of going to university like your older brothers? That's a quite sure discussion that the two of you had, right?
Yeah, and really, I think if my father had been alive, I probably wouldn't have been allowed
That's right. Yeah.
to join a band. But then, when she saw me on the television, like 4 months afterwards, she was like, whoa, wow, this is amazing and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And then she would always say, okay, you've been on the television, you've had lots of #1 records and things. How come you've got no money still?
That's right. Yeah.
That's another story.
Sorry. Yeah. Yeah. And eventually you guys did. Yeah. Yeah. You released that.
Yes.
Guy. That's the first one. We're talking about 1972.
Yeah.
And then in 73, did Little Guy.
Yeah. That's
Great,
right.
great
Music.
music.
We just did tours and albums and tours and albums, like 1 or 2 a year. Oh, you had to. You had to just take advantage of it and just keep it was relentless. But we were young, and you can do that when you're young. You just want to do it.
That's right. You're single, no responsibility. Yes, but that's my life. I need to make something of my life. And I think your mom was very nice to you, because I think you didn't have any money at the time. Obviously, you need a better guitar, and you went to a store, and actually you went to the bank and say, well, look at a Fender Strat that was 120 pounds at the time, was a lot of money, and twice as the one that you have played for 55 some years ago. I say, well, I don't have any money. I want to go to a bank. What they will say, your mom went with you, and they say, hey, my husband used to have an account here. Lend us 120, and we'll pay, and so on and so forth. So and then you did it.
No, totally. No, it was, but she was very cool like that. Yeah, but she could feel that something was gonna come.
And you were famous. People in Colombia didn't know you were famous, so she started calling assistant, nieces, nephew. Hey, my son is really good at guitar, and as a guitarist, he's on the television, and black and white.
Yeah. She used to really annoy them all my her brothers and sisters, because they were a family of 8 brothers and sisters. And said, my son this, my son that. And they said, oh no, they were really getting bored with hearing all about my famous son.
That's right. And then good question. I think I have of this album, I have a 3 version. This is the remastered one. I bought the simple one some years ago, and the one in Europe. I don't know which country I have, but Virgin Play that was the Virginia Play chart. It wasn't here at the time. No, it is here, but in the early edition.
No, it wasn't on the first album. No, it was done separately, because the album came out, and people said, well, there's no single there, and if you want to get on television, it was very important in those days to be on a program called Top of the Pops. And it was the same for Bowie. Once he got on Top of the Pops, people saw him. That's when he went around. And after, so Brian said, well, I've got these 3 chords. Let's make something out of it. So we just went in to the same studio and recorded it in one day. And then it was, it got us on Top of the Pops, and it got us noticed everywhere. And it was, if there's always one track that will open all the doors for you.
Yeah.
And had that one track in the UK, that one track, and it really summed up all the ingredients of Roxy in 2 minutes and 59 seconds. You know?
That's right. Yeah.
And so that meant that we then
went up, right? So and that, I think that got attention of promoter in the US, because toward the end of 72, you came to the United States, and the first gig you played was December 8th in New York at the Madison Square Garden, playing with Jethro Tull at the time, you know, so.
Well, that's right. So we've been playing in small pubs and clubs.
Yeah.
And then, could have been the first gig or may have been the second one. We were supporting Jethro Tull at Madison Square Gardens, and we were like out of our depth totally. We had tiny little amps, and we just looked at this enormous place and said, "Oh my goodness!" We realized that America was a whole different ballgame, you know. And then our agent, who was called Frank Barcelona, put us on with lots of famous up and coming rock bands, and we played all over the place. But we realized that it was going to be very difficult for us. We had to learn how to project, and we needed to get bigger amps. We needed better equipment, better everything. So Roxy didn't really take off at all. You know, some people, apparently, I've read that at that gig at Madison Square Gardens, the first 2 rows were completely full of journalists. And once we finished playing, they all left.
Really?
They didn't stay for Jethro Tull. Because they'd heard that we were like a new, interesting, different band. And so the super critics like Lester Bangs and all sorts of people had come to see us. But I don't think we were very good at that, because we were just like fish out of water, you know.
Sure, absolutely. And after that, you were 5 days later, you guys play in Los Angeles, and then in Florida, right? With the Allman Brothers, Mackay Orchestra, and so forth.
Crazy, yeah. But obviously, like very low on the bill, and you know, we'd go Miami Speedway. We were on at like 12 o'clock in the morning. You know, nobody was there, obviously.
Well, people were drunk probably at the time. You know, I don't know.
Trying to recover from the night before.
That's right. But the exposure was important. 3 gigs in the United States, and critics were noticing your band, and then, well, that's the end. We need to go back to the UK, right?
No, absolutely. So, and also we need to go back, and we need to do another album straight away. So, you know, so we started rehearsing. We were in America over Christmas and New Year. I think we supported Steve Miller in Chicago on New Year's Eve. And then we flew back, and then we were like, right, we've got to make a new album. So let's just get on with it. And that's when we made For Your Pleasure, the next one, like in 4 weeks, you know, and then off again touring everywhere. You know, it's like a campaign, you know. We had the first year we did, like, between the release of the recording of the album and December, we did 100 gigs. And then the next year we did like 150 gigs and more gigs, because we were, what we used to call ourselves was inspired amateurs. We wanted to be more professional. We had to learn our stagecraft, learn how to deal with dodgy equipment. You know, 'cause they didn't really have monitors in those days, and one forgets. This is a long time ago, you know, 50 years. The tech now is just like off the scale. It's incredible.
Right. Yeah. No phone, no internet, no YouTube,
no computers.
You know, people needed to go to the gig and see you guys play live. And,
read in newspapers or
you know,
on radio, local radio. Radio was so important in the 70s.
And then you say, well, we need to record a new album, so I better get a new guitar.
Yes.
And you end up getting this guy. I think you got this guy after that, right?
Well, actually, not that one.
No?
I'll tell you, not that. I got a red Firebird 7. Now that is, there's a picture of it in the book. But my it's on the cover of the second album.
Yeah.
On the inside cover. But the important thing is it was red as
Oh, I
well.
see. Yeah.
So there's a bit of continuity there.
Yeah. And then became like a, a red guitar became like a signature of,
Yes, my signature guitar. In fact, let me see. I do have a little picture, a little badge here.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if you can see there. Let's see if where we can put it. See that?
Yeah. Oh,
That's the red Firebird. Yeah.
Gotcha.
And people, it's like this because on my site you can buy a little badge with the signs.
Bless him. Yeah. Wow. Good for you, man. And then obviously, for one reason or another that we don't get to get in, Brian Eno ended up leaving the band after the night For Your Pleasure in 1973, right? So.
Yes, and in fact, I took him the book last week and gave it to him, and
Really?
I said to him, "You'll be surprised because I have a picture of you waving goodbye after your last gig that you've never seen before." So
wow.
I think you'll be quite surprised, of what's in the book, and also I think they've now all got a copy of the book. I think they'll be quite surprised about my background, because nobody knew about all my family history and stuff like that. So I think they'd be quite surprised.
Yeah, that's a great motivation to write a book. People get to know you, not just a Roxy music guy, but the history, how you arrived to Roxy music, and know Spanish. And then you end up releasing your first solo record, Diamond Head, in 1975. And then another record at the same time with under title Main Street, right? With your friends for Quiet Sun as well.
Yes.
How you manage? Easy for me. How you manage to do two records kind of at the same time with two different bands and working like crazy,
I get to do a solo album because everybody else had already done solo albums.
That's right. Yeah.
When Eno left, he did a solo album and I helped him with that. And then Andy Mackay did a solo album and I helped him with that. And then Brian Ferry did solo albums and I played on some of his stuff as well. And so they got to the point where I said to the managers, "What about me? Can I do a solo album?" They said yes. So, but you've got like 3 weeks to do it in between the tours, an English tour and then going to Canada and America over Christmas. So I said, okay, well, given the chance to, I said, and I didn't tell the management, but I rang up my friends from Quiet Sun, the old band, said, let's record a Quiet Sun album at the same time and not tell them that we're doing this. So I fitted in. So from 12 to 6 every day, this was at a famous island record studio called Basing Street. Now, 12 to 6, I did my solo album. And then from 6 to 12, I did the Quiet Sun album every day. And then, and some of the people were the same. Bill McCormick and Eno helped as well on both albums. And then finished totally exhausted and got on a plane and went to Canada to start the Roxy tour. So and then I said to the management, "Oh, by the way, I've done 2 albums." They were slightly annoyed, but they were forced to put them both out.
Yeah, I wanna ask you another question because there was a lot of this particular album, which is the Country Life, which is the 4th album. Quite sure there was a lot of controversy with the picture of this album. Feel free to, and you elaborate on the book. But for people who have not read the book, and encourage you to buy the book. It would have been a lot of controversy to put that in. Never mind explaining that to your mom.
Yeah, well, this is what happened. I mean, so Brian had gone on holiday with this fashion designer called Anthony Price, and they'd gone to Portugal, and they rented a villa, and the villa next door were these 2 ladies, and one was the wife, and the other was the sister of the guitarist in a German band called Can.
Yep. Yeah, I know that. Yeah.
Now, I don't know how this happened, but they came up with the idea of taking a picture of them. And the first thing I heard about it or saw was when we'd finished recording the album, and the manager said, "Why come down to our house and I'll show you the cover." And so I went round there, and they bring out that cover, and I go, "Oh my God!" I'm thinking, "What am I going to tell my mother?" This little Colombian Catholic lady. I just like, but it caused a controversy, and so the record company, in different countries, they had different versions of the cover. In some countries, there were no girls on the front at all. It was just
I see. Yep.
the foliage behind. Other countries, it was in a paper bag, brown paper bag, sealed. So
Oh, wow.
Inside.
You couldn't see
So,
inside. Right?
so obviously, I showed my mother the one with the no girls on. So
Yeah,
she never really saw it.
I got you. And then at the time, Brian Ferry ended up leaving Roxy Music. I suppose, he was in many ways like the creative force, the front man, all the TVs.
Yeah.
But to be fair, everybody, and it happened in many bands, right? You can get along well with your friend, but at the same time, you want to explore other type of music that you couldn't do with the band. So it happened to Freddie Mercury, it happened to Roger Waters, Whether they get along with David Gilmour is another story. They want to explore different things. I say, guy, I want to try this out, right?
Yeah.
And then, I can always come back to Roxy Music, and he tried that. And I imagine that, you and Andy and Paul had the conversation. I thought, man, what are we doing now? I mean, the front guy's leaving. He writes a lot of the lyrics. He's a good-looking guy. All the ladies go and see for him, and he's appearing on TV. Should we stay together? Should we get another singer? Should we break up? And then why should you have the conversation with your buddies, right? So
So, but at the time, I think by then I was like 25 or 26, and I thought, right, I just want to do music. So obviously I was very close to Brian Eno. So we then said, let's form a little band. And him and Bill McCormick, who was in Quiet Sun, and Bill's brother Ian, we went away and talked about what kind of band it would be. But Eno, being a sort of art project type person, said, look, let's form a band, but it'll only last for 6 weeks as a concept. We'll have people who love technique and musicians who hate technique, and we'll put a band together and we'll see what happens, and we'll use some of our solo material. And that's what we did. And it became a project called the 801. And that was the name of the band. And we were meant to do about 10 gigs. We only ended up doing 3 gigs because they all got cancelled, all the other ones. But we recorded one of them, and it became an album called 801 Live. And it's one of the most successful things I've ever been involved with, because the experiment really worked very well.
Right. Yeah. I think if Simon Phillips played that album, right? Is that correct?
So Simon Phillips was very young at the time. He was 19. After the concert, so many people wanted to work with him. Jeff Beck, Mick Jagger, you name it. Every fantastic musician, Pete Townsend. They all use Simon Phillips, and he's still like a famous in America.
I got to get to know him and interview him as well. He's a very humble guy, and of course he's
a wonderful guy,
quiet guy and humble, unassuming guy. And his dad was a musician as well, and he's great guy. And of course, what the best exposure, playing the guy that that live gig, and then everybody started calling me. That's great. That's the best thing you could have done for him, with Eno and
with the other musicians who were there, Francis Monkman and Lloyd Watson and Bill McCormick. And so it was a very influential album for lots of musicians, actually, as it turned out, bass players and drummers. And I still listen to the drums on it, and it was like unbelievably good. Just if you just listen to the drums, if you didn't like the singing or anything, it's like,
That's
wow.
right. Yeah, absolutely. And then some year later in 1976 that we're talking about now, Brian Ferry called you back. He was going to embark in a world tour with, John Wetton. And so, of course, you couldn't say no to that.
No, well, yeah, he suddenly, the night before his tour, he already had fantastic musicians, Chris Spedding, Mel Collins, I think Paul Thompson was actually playing drums as well, and John Wetton, who was a good friend of all of ours. And I said, I was recording in the studio, and I thought, oh, yeah, let's go. So, I jumped on his tour. and that was, great fun. And then eventually we got back together with Roxy,
Good for you,
all that. And then it started another cycle of like 5 years.
That's right, yeah. And in between, before I think you bought another house in the country and you built your own studio was a lot of money for you. So you were recording your own, helping other band. You needed money to pay the bills, so going and tour with Roxy Music help out a lot financially because you needed to make a decision. Man, I want to build the studio. I started working on it. I don't know if I will be able to pay the bills. So everything that come my way, I need to say yes. And work came your way, and you say no. I'm going for it for the studio. And then a lot of famous people end up playing that in that studio, right? So,
well, yeah. I mean, say for instance, Duran Duran's first #1 single was recorded there. Please Tell Me Now. Or was it Please Tell Me Now? I can't remember. Susie and the Banshees.
Wow.
Hong Kong Garden. Some of Brothers in Arms was recorded there. The Moody Blues.
Yeah.
Guy called, British Cliff Richard. Just all sorts of different people came through, which was great for me because I got to meet all these people. Scott Walker even came with Daniel Lanois trying to produce him. Lots of adventures. And then eventually a lot of Spanish bands. Héroes del Silencio, Fito Páez, Terciopelados, Draco y Rosa, just like loads of Paul Weller, Robert Wyatt, blah, blah, blah. So it was a great, fun place to have, I don't have it anymore.
You end up selling the place, right? Yeah.
So, but I have another studio in London now.
Yeah, I got you.
That was out in the country, yeah.
And was it at the time you ended up forming like a band with Lowell and Kevin Godley as well? Is that correct?
Yeah, from 10cc.
From 10cc, yeah, which I know them well.
Yeah. Well, we started building the studio together because Kevin used to live next door.
I got you.
And they had experience of studios with Strawberry in Manchester, in Salford. And so they knew about studios, but then they had to pull out because they had a big tax bill. And so, my manager said, do you want to build a studio and have no money for the next 5 years? Or what do you want to do? I said, I want to build a studio and have no money for the next 5 years.
That's right. Yeah, you went for it, right?
So, so I knew that owning the means of production would serve me well long term, that you don't have to go and ask permission to a record company to record an album. So I could do whatever I wanted. And that's, that started in 1978. And I've always had a studio, and I've never had to go and ask a record company if I could record anything. So I can do anything, even if it's not going to sell at all. As long as I'm happy, I can do it, and I put it out myself. It's all like independent. And I've been, I've had an independent company record label as well since 1988.
So, good for you. And then you figured out, well, I'm kind of well known in the UK, and I got to know all these great musicians. I speak Spanish. I have my own studio. Maybe I should start helping out some bands in Latin America that, one, I know the language. I'm not that far from Mexico or Spain. There were a lot of great music. I have my own studio. You know, my cost could be low. I know how to do music. I know a lot of famous musicians that I can help them out. Maybe I should start my own record label and start calling people, and you did. You know, and a lot of people don't know about the side story. You know, like Héroes del Silencio, right? It's it's a very famous band, and people you know, English speakers wouldn't know, or
No, they wouldn't know. And you know,
yeah,
for instance, that was
yeah,
in 1991, and the singer in Héroes del Silencio, Enrique Bunbury,
yeah,
in June, he's playing at Madison Square Gardens. This June, he could
yeah,
sell out Madison Square Gardens because and in Mexico City, he plays to 60,000 people. He's a superstar,
yeah.
you know, and yeah, I met him when he was like 20, you know, so I'm very proud
Of course, you know.
of like recognizing his talent and being a bit of a mentor.
Gotcha.
For
Yes, people were looking up to. Of Fito Páez also is very important
Vito
in
Paez.
Argentina, right? He's a very well known guy, of course.
And
You know,
everywhere, he still plays to huge audiences. Even
that's
in
right.
Radio City, he played big. He sold out with Elvis Costello last
Yeah,
year.
that's right. Yeah,
And Draco, Robbie Rosa,
yeah.
Puerto Rican, but you know, huge and like heavy, but like interesting, really. Terciopelados, they're
In
still
Colombia, yeah,
playing, yeah, and playing all over the world.
that's
Terciopelados, I
right.
saw them here 6 months ago. Fantastic, still.
Good for you, man. Good for you. Good for you. Good for you. All right, and then two more questions, and then
Yeah,
we'll take a break, and
yeah,
then we'll do because,
yeah.
as I say
Exactly.
before, everything is in the book, very affordable. You know, you can buy in Amazon, or you know, if you
Yeah,
buy it to your website, you will you will get a signed copy as well, right? I assume that you will sign the
yeah.
stuff for the and then you going back to Roxy Music toward the end of the Avalon tour. You know, a lot of things happened, and you know, I think Brian Ferry wanted to go on his own again, try his own music, which he has all the right to do, and
Sure.
do,
Yeah,
yeah, you know, and then you know, thing uh, didn't work out, and then you know, you went back to your own thing. He tried to go on his own again, and then you guys didn't get back together for another 18 years or so, right?
that's
But
right.
that's
We had an 18 years break.
yeah,
Although, to be fair, I think I did play on a few of his solo albums, just
yeah,
occasional tracks and things like that. But yeah, he was pursuing his own thing. And the thing about Roxy, which I, you know, with this book, trying to make sense of what
yeah.
happened, what was it all about? And Eno put it very well recently. He said it was, and he thought of a new word for it. He's called it a scenius, like a scene, but a scenius of people coming together, like-minded musicians. Now, when I joined Roxy, I thought I was joining a band like with the Four Musketeers or the Beatles, where they all live together, all have a lot of fun together. What I was really joining was an art collective, because immediately
Absolutely. Yeah.
everybody started doing solo projects and different things. And so what I realize now is that I wanted one thing, because as a 10-year-old, hearing about the Beatles, the Stones and all, I thought it was like, there's four musketeers, four friends who get together and form a band, and it's all camaraderie and all. Roxy actually was never really like that. I didn't realize at the time. So we are still all doing exactly the same as we were doing in 1973, which is basically Brian Ferry is not far from here doing like interesting different music. Brian Eno is being Brian Eno and doing like incredible different. Andy Mackay is doing incredible thing. Paul Thompson, and we're sort of speak to each other and everything, and we're like it's like a collective, but
That's
it's
right. That's
like
right. Yeah.
the conventional idea of a band. And so I, you know, through doing this book, it's made it makes more sense for me, you know.
Absolutely. And also to mention, like, you know, David Bowie used to, like you say before, used to wear special clothes. I think and then, you know, Duran Duran also start doing a lot of cool videos with, in yachts and the sea, and attractive ladies wear very nice clothes. You guys have a lot of great outfit as well, right? So, and I think it's in the book you mentioned that, what are you wearing tonight? No, I'm not telling you. What are you wearing tonight? No, no, I'm so surprised. And then, great outfit, and people love that kind of stuff as well,
It was all very individual. There was never any discussion about what you're going to wear or a look that we were going to have. It was all individual people surprising each other with the outfits, and we didn't see the outfits until literally 10 minutes before going on stage every time. And he'd come with a black suit carrier, and I'd say to okay, show me what you're going to wear. He said, no, you show me what you're going to wear. I said, no, you. And he'll get this thing out and have feathers everywhere. I said, oh my God, where did that happen? And I said, okay, now you show me yours. And I had like an armadillo type outfit. And said, what? All right. And the tour manager would say, right, you're on now. And we'd all go out with this crazy stuff, and people would go, wow,
what is that?
So it was a lot of humor and a lot of fun,
Absolutely.
But what we set out to do, our mission statement, if you like.
Absolutely,
It was do weird, interesting music, but deliver it in an attractive way, visually.
Yeah, amen. Yeah.
So it's sort of like confusing for people. So this is weird music, and they're dressed like that. What's this all about,
Yeah. Plus, you get a lot of pictures and on the newspaper, a lot of attention, and it was like Peter Gabriel did the same thing, right? Without telling the other Genesis guy, no, I want to wear like a mask and a red dress, and
that was
that was something else.
Yeah, that's
right. That was the end of chapter 6. That's the end of the book. So we wanna stop here, and then we'll do a part 2 when Phil have the time. Please go ahead and buy the book. It's very expensive, like $20 in Amazon here in US. So you can buy that book from his website as well. Easy to read, great picture, great quotes, a lot of stuff you didn't know about, Phil Manzanera, that grew up in Latin America, Cuba, Venezuela, Colombian mother, and so on and so forth. Another side of Phil that you don't know as well. So it was very nice talking to you, Phil.
Okay, Claudio. Look forward to the next part.
We'll do the next one, and we'll do more. We'll bring more surprises as well. I like to bring surprises that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Muy bien.
Okay. Muchas gracias.
De nada.
Buenas tardes. Igual. Saludos.